Tonight at 10, Boris Johnson denies ever saying that he'd rather let thousands of bodies pile up than approve another lockdown. On the campaign trail today, Mr Johnson said the reports were total rubbish. But the question was asked again, did he use those words, yes or no?
No, but again, I think the important thing I think that people want us to get on and do as a government is to make sure that the lockdowns work.
Another day when the Prime Minister's had to answer questions about his own conduct. Another day when Downing Street had to focus on defending itself.
We'll have more details as the COVID-19 Bereaved Families Group said that the alleged remarks were heartless and disrespectful. Also tonight. India's COVID crisis deepens. People search for oxygen supplies as the government tells the public not to panic. In Scotland, restrictions are eased as pubs, shops, gyms and cafes reopen. And in Wales, activity centres join the list of places welcoming customers once again. The British-Iranian aid worker Nazanin ZaghariRatcliffe is sent back to jail in Tehran for 12 months, charged with spreading propaganda against Iran.
Paris, they don't even speak English there.
And at the age of 83, Sir Anthony Hopkins becomes the oldest person to win the Best Actor award at the Oscars.
And coming up in the sport on the BBC News Channel, looking to get the band back together as three former Arsenal legends join the Spotify founder in a bid to buy the club.
Good evening. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has denied saying that he would rather let the bodies pile high in their thousands than agree to another COVID lockdown. The remarks were alleged to have been made last autumn during a heated discussion in Downing Street. Mr Johnson said today the reports were total rubbish. But sources who say they're familiar with the exchanges have spoken to the BBC and they insist the Prime Minister did make the comments. The campaign group, the COVID-19 Bereaved Families for Justice, said that the alleged comments were heartless, disrespectful and unsympathetic. Let's join our political editor Laura Kuensberg at Westminster tonight.
Huw, this time last week, Downing Street was hoping that growing claims of bad behaviour and misconduct in government were pointing at former Prime Ministers, at former officials, and that they wouldn't touch them. But for 6 days in a row now, questions have been pointing at this administration. And today, comments the Prime Minister's alleged to have made in autumn last year have caused a whole new swirl of outrage.
You ready?
Politics is not just a game, but a constant back and forth over the most serious of decisions. Boris Johnson's alleged, in the autumn, to have made the most serious of remarks, suggesting around the time of the second lockdown that the bodies of those dying of coronavirus could just pile up. Did he?
No, but again, I think the important thing I think that people want us to get on and do as a government is to make sure that the lockdowns work.
Yet back in early autumn, it was tense. Ministers and advisers divided over whether to lock down again as coronavirus rose. After arguments, Boris Johnson did agree to reintroduce restrictions.
You must stay at home. You may only leave home for specific reasons.
But several sources familiar with private conversations at the time say the Prime Minister did then suggest he would let bodies pile high in their thousands rather than repeat the process again. At the time, Dominic Cummings was by Boris Johnson's side. Now the Prime Minister's former chief advisor is very firmly out of government and very firmly on the warpath. There's a list of dangerous claims stacking up at Downing Street's door, not just about the Prime Minister's attitude during the pandemic, but about how contracts were awarded, what promises he made, and how and who paid for an expensive makeover of the Downing Street flat, where he lives above the shop. Theresa May gave a rare glimpse of the flat in her last week in office, but the pink sofas and beige carpets were moved out.
Thank you very much.
When Boris Johnson and his fiancée moved in, it's claimed Tory donors initially picked up the tab for tens of thousands of pounds of renovation. If so, that should have been declared, and that hasn't happened yet. And the most senior civil servant in the country wasn't willing to shed much light on it for MPs this afternoon.
I asked you whether you were aware whether or not any private donations had been used to refurbish the flat. I mean, that's a straightforward yes or no, really.
So, as I said, the Prime Minister's asked me to conduct a review into how this has been done, and asked that I share the details of those conclusions with the committee.
After months of claims, Downing Street now says the Prime Minister paid out of his own pocket, but we don't know when or where he got the money. For the opposition, sparks flying in Downing Street are a political gift.
We've got lots of investigations going on, but we haven't got anything that's looking at the pattern of behaviour. And day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. We need a full investigation that can get to the bottom of that, and most importantly, make recommendations about change, because we need to change the rules.
Boris Johnson's sometimes been proud of pushing political convention. Downing Street is adamant that in all senses regulations were followed, but with a long list of claims against him, it isn't yet clear if he was always following the rules.
Let's talk to Laura once again. Laura, you said there about a list of dangerous claims stacking up. What is your sense of the potential danger for the Prime Minister?
Well, Huw, we've got to be clear about all of this. On all of these issues, Downing Street says that the rules have been followed appropriately. They've said again and again that nothing is wrong. But this lengthening list could pose some very serious problems. First of all, there's the mystery around exactly how the Prime Minister's expensive renovations of his flat were paid for. There are a lot of questions still outstanding. We simply don't know exactly what happened yet. Second of all, there are questions about whether or not all the rules were followed during the pandemic, and whether that's over the awarding of contracts or indeed the controversial remarks that he's said to have made, as we have been reporting today. And at the beginning of all of this, asking Conservatives about it, they would say things like, well, look, Boris Johnson is known for pushing the rules. Everybody knows that he likes to push the boundaries. He enjoys overturning convention. But these matters are serious. They aren't just the question of political rhetoric or flourishes or somehow trying to provoke people with the kind of political activities that you're taking. And there are many questions here that there are not yet complete answers to. And I think the confidence that Conservatives had a few days ago that somehow this was priced in, somehow it would blow over, is in some quarters beginning to fade. And there certainly is a question that they're not in control of events.
Laura, many thanks once again. Laura Kuenssberg, our political editor at Westminster. Well, India is reportedly running out of COVID vaccines, just as the government there was planning to boost the nationwide vaccination programme. India's healthcare system is unable to cope with the scale of the crisis. More than 352,000 new cases were reported in the past 24 hours and more than 2,800 deaths. The Indian government says there is no need to panic, as our correspondent Davina Guptina reports.
A haunting warning. As these funeral pyres burn through the night in the western Indian city of Nagpur, they indicate how the country is failing to save precious lives. For the fifth straight day, India saw a record high of over 2,800 deaths. A worsening scenario as hospitals and COVID hotspots face acute shortage of beds, oxygen supply and medicine. This public hospital in India's capital, Delhi, is simply unable to cope. Ramila Kumar came with her mother, who's on oxygen support and needs immediate aid. But like many others, they are forced to wait for hours outside.
Since morning we are calling people, trying for oxygen and everything, but nobody's responding, and I don't think these are enough. I don't know, since my mother is ill and I have been panicked since so long.
The ambulance driver who drove them here feels helpless.
We've been waiting since 11 in the morning. They're not taking the patient. Look how seriously ill she is.
Even though the government is opening new COVID facilities to admit patients and transporting additional oxygen supply to the city, they cannot meet the unprecedented rush in hospitals. For now, countries like the UK and the US have come to India's aid with essential medical supplies and oxygen kits. But much more is needed. And until then, for thousands in the city, the endless nightmare continues during the day. On Sunday, this hospital in North Delhi, as its oxygen stock dwindled, families like that of Rajat were told to organize oxygen on their own. He managed to refill the cylinder by paying 900 times the regular cost to a tout. For him, it's a small price to keep his father alive and breathing in the ICU.
I got 10 litres of oxygen cylinder, but how will it help? It won't last for more than 1 hour. Where do we go? Which government should we go to? Who will give us oxygen? My father is in the hospital right now.
As Rajat rushes to search for another oxygen refill, throughout the day, countless others are running out of time in India's capital. Devina Gupta for BBC News, Delhi.
Well, here restrictions are being eased in Scotland. Pubs, cafes and restaurants have opened their doors again as the process goes on, and customers can go inside those places before 8 p.m. They can only have an alcoholic drink if they're seated outside. Shops, gyms, swimming pools are also reopening, and travel restrictions have been relaxed, allowing trips to and from other parts of the UK. Our Scotland correspondent Lorna Gordon has the latest.
Scotland is reopening for business. After so many months of shuttered shops and closed doors, colour, cash and people are returning to the streets. For some, today means family reunions.
Well, it's coming to see my granddaughter, who I haven't seen for 2 years. And this was the day I thought, right, get on a train. Scotland is now open for visitors.
Where do you come from?
Lancaster.
For others, it's a chance to celebrate with friends.
We've all taken the day off and the following day so we can revel in Edinburgh's brilliant hospitality.
Scotland's not exactly been known for its outdoor dining culture, but COVID is changing all that. And today feels like a big step back towards normality. Cheers! Outside as well as indoors, hospitality is restarting here. But the Scottish Government says the risk of transmission is greater inside, so strict controls remain in place. The industry disputes this. Nick Wood, who runs over 20 venues, says the restrictions mean it's too financially challenging for some to reopen straight away.
At the moment I can't serve alcohol inside, and I have to shut inside at 8 o'clock. Outside I can serve alcohol till 10. Until we can serve alcohol indoors, there's a huge amount of our venues that just won't be viable at all.
All retail in Scotland can now reopen. After months away from the till, staff in this shop just glad to be back at work.
It was a bit like waking up from a long nap. Kind of everything's a bit like relearning how to just work in a shop again. It's a bit sort of strange, but also very nice. It's familiar space.
Guest houses, B&Bs, hotels and campsites are ready to welcome back visitors. In this, the biggest push to open Scotland's economy since this latest lockdown started easing. For many, though, it will still be a soft start.
I do have somebody coming in today, later on, and then it's a slow trickle. And at the middle of May, when the restaurants can then I think they're allowed to serve alcohol indoors. That's when I've got more bookings.
Rules on masks and social distancing remain, but this is still a big change to life in Scotland, and all going well, further easing is planned for the months ahead. Lorna Gordon, BBC News, Edinburgh.
Well, some restrictions have also been lifted in Wales. Groups of 6 people from 6 different households can meet outside at pubs and cafes and restaurants. Theme parks are also welcoming visitors again. The maximum of 30 people can take part in organised sports, and the same number can attend outdoor receptions for weddings or for funerals. Our Wales correspondent Huw Griffith reports now from Aberdare in South Wales.
3, 2, 1...
Launching out of lockdown and into business, this new zip wire in Aberdare welcomed its first ever customers this morning after what's been a bumpy ride, having to change their opening date several times. Colin was one of the first down the line.
Absolutely awesome. Oh, that was fabulous. I thought it might have been a bit faster than it was, but it was brilliant.
Built on the site of an old coal mine, this zip wire was originally meant to open in July last year, but the pandemic kept pushing plans further and further into the future until today finally arrived. They are now fully booked for the next 3 weeks.
I really think that people are going to enjoy this.
That's welcome news for Caitlin, who's been desperate to start her new job.
I'm really excited. I didn't really sleep last night because it's one of those things where everyone is just going to be rushing in. Really excited.
High spirits and plenty of wine and beer too, as pubs and cafes around Wales started up outdoor service again. After months of meeting online, it was a chance for Sophie and her colleagues to see each other face to face again and not worry about pressing mute.
It just feels a bit less forced, and when we're talking online it normally is about work and stuff, but you get to spend a bit more time getting to know people personally outside. And
so when I've been chatting to you online, you've been forcing it?
Yeah, it's been a bit forced.
It's fantastic. It's been a really long winter, so we were last out I think in December, November time. So coming back out in the sunshine as well, it's fantastic.
This is your first rodeo.
The weather has so far been kind to those who make their living outdoors. A sudden drop in temperature could cool demand, but for now there's little to dampen the exhilaration of being open at last. Huw Edwards, BBC News, Aberdare.
Right, so let's take a look at the latest official government figures then for the pandemic. They show that 2,064 new infections were recorded in the latest 24-hour period. That means an average of 2,309 new cases per day in the past week. There were 1,781 people in hospital with coronavirus over the 7 days to last Thursday. 6 deaths were recorded in the past 24 hours of people who'd had a positive COVID test within the previous 28 days, and these figures are often reported lower on a Monday. The average number of deaths per day in the past week is 23. And the total number of UK deaths is now 127,434. If we move on to look at the vaccinations, just over 33,750,000 people have now had their first jab, taking the overall number who've had their second jab to nearly 12,900,000. Now, vaccines are being offered to all of those aged 44 or older in England from today. The NHS hopes to roll out the offer to all adults over 40 in the coming days, if the supplies are available. Our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson has more details.
A large vaccination centre at Wimbledon Football Club in southwest London today. Staff here say they've had a rush of younger people booking appointments as 44-year-olds were invited for vaccines in England for the first time.
It's just fantastic to know that there's more cohorts coming through. People then are, offered vaccination. That means safety.
But why has the vaccination programme only opened up to a single new year group this time, 44-year-olds, instead of everyone in their 40s? Well, one answer may be found here. Although the number of doses being given remains relatively stable, hundreds of thousands of people are now being prioritised for their second jabs, seen here in dark blue.
The danger is if we extend that period between the first and the second vaccination, so the so-called prime and boost, that we might have a situation where the protection really goes down. That's the why it's so important to have that second dose.
Another challenge is that people in their 40s make up a vastly larger age group than any of the older groups who've already been invited for vaccinations.
There's no doubt that the rollout of the UK's vaccination programme has been rapid. Already, 90% of people at risk of dying of COVID-19 have received one dose. The big question is, will the younger generation, who are at less risk of coronavirus, be as enthusiastic for the jab?
The good news is that vaccine hesitancy seems to be falling in Great Britain. Figures comparing February with March show in young people who are among the most sceptical, it dropped from 17 to 12%. And in the black population, it halved from a high of 44% to 22%. And to ensure as many younger people as possible are vaccinated, this government advert is running for the first time today. 35 to 39-year-olds have now been invited for vaccination in Northern Ireland. NHS England says a decision on all 40-year-olds will be made in the next few days, based on factors such as vaccine supplies. Sophie Hutchinson, BBC News.
The British-Iranian aid worker Nazanin ZaghariRatcliffe has been sentenced to a further 12 months in prison in Tehran on charges of spreading propaganda against the Iranian regime. Last month, she completed a 5-year sentence for spying, a charge that she had vehemently denied. Her husband said he was bitterly disappointed at the court's decision. Zach correspondent Caroline Hawley tells us.
Nazanin's baby girl is now almost 7, and Gabriella has only celebrated one birthday, her first, with both her parents there. She's now watching her daughter grow up over the phone. Neither parent can bear to break the news of the latest sentence to her.
We haven't told her yet, and in fact I want to check with Nazanin. Does she want me to tell her? Does she want to tell her? I suspect she'll want to protect her for as long as we can. It's just very simple.
But how can Richard protect Nazanin? He says she and other dual nationals are being used as bargaining chips over a long-standing military debt Iran wants Britain to repay, and that her fate may also now be tied to negotiations with Iran over its nuclear activities. What do you want the government to do now?
There clearly is both the need to get Nazanin home and the others home as quickly as possible, and to make it clear that you can't do diplomacy this way. That is going to need discussions with all of the Western world.
It's more than 5 years since she was arrested at Tehran airport on her way home to the UK. Since then, Nazanin ZaghariRatcliffe has been through solitary confinement, 2 trials, and now 2 sentences.
I think it's wrong that she's there in the first place, and we'll be working very hard to secure her release from Iran, her ability to return to her family here in the UK, just as we work for all our dual national cases in Iran, and the government will not stop. We will redouble our effort.
There we go.
This used to be a favourite spot for Nazanin. They used to come here together as a family. But Richard says a 1-year travel ban is to follow the 1-year sentence. So without a solution, they're now looking at another 2 years apart. Caroline Hawley, BBC News.
Let's take a look then at some of the other news today. A 20-year-old man who died after jumping into the River Thames to rescue a woman has been hailed a hero by his family. Folajimi Olubunmi Adewole and a friend went into the water after spotting the woman falling from London Bridge on Saturday night. Emergency services rescued the woman and 1 male. A case brought by the Serious Fraud Office against 2 former executives at the private security firm Serco has collapsed after the SFO declined to offer evidence. A judge ordered that Nicholas Woods and Simon Marshall be acquitted. They had been accused of concealing £12 million in profits from electronically tagging criminals. Students and staff at a college in West Sussex had to leave the premises this afternoon after reports of gunfire. An 18-year-old local teenager was arrested following the incident at Crawley College, and a firearm and a knife were seized. 2 staff members suffered minor injuries. Now, the former chief executive of the Post Office, Paula Venables, has resigned her roles on the boards of the supermarket Morrisons and the home furnishing retailer Dunelm, following the scandal which led to the wrongful convictions of Post Office workers when she was in charge. Ms Venables is also stepping down from her duties as an Anglican priest. Our Consumer Affairs correspondent, Coletta Smith, has been following the story.
Still on a high from her victory at the Court of Appeal on Friday, I'm back in Hull with Janet Skinner.
It's just wrong.
And Paula Venables is on her mind.
She's had numerous times where she could have, been upfront with everything. So to have to actually get a victory for her to step down, it's quite bittersweet, really.
Although the computer problems began before Paula Venables took charge, under her leadership, prosecutions continued. A High Court judge has previously said that when she was the boss, the Post Office had engaged in oppressive behaviour.
Here at Morrison's headquarters and at the homeware retailer Dunelm, they're hoping that today gives them some points in terms of good governance and puts enough distance between themselves and the storm clouds that are surrounding the post office because of this scandal and the damage that's being done to the post office brand.
The Diocese of St Albans also announced today that Paula Venables will be stepping back from her duties as an ordained minister in the Church of England. Former sub-postmaster and churchgoer Tom Hedges was one of those who had his conviction overturned on Friday.
She's done the right thing now and stepped down, but I just wonder whether she jumped before she was pushed.
In a statement, Paula Venables has again apologised to sub-postmasters and says that she will now be able to focus fully on working with the ongoing government inquiry to ensure the affected sub-postmasters and wider public get the answers they deserve. The Department for Business says it welcomes that move. But the man who ran the post office's original investigation says those questions won't be answered because the government inquiry is looking the wrong way.
It wasn't dodgy software that prosecuted sub-postmasters. It was senior management within Post Office. And the inquiry is avoiding looking at the decision-making and the accountability within Post Office.
Janet agrees and wants a more thorough investigation.
I think there is a lot more people involved and she shouldn't be made the scapegoat for everything that's gone wrong.
The Business Minister is due to make a statement about the sub-postmasters issue tomorrow in Parliament. Coletta Smith, BBC News.
2 former British paratroopers have denied the murder of a leading member of the group known as the Official IRA in Belfast half a century ago. At the opening of the trial today, prosecutors said the 2 officers were not lawfully justified in shooting 24-year-old Joe McCann. Let's talk to our Ireland correspondent Emma Vardy, who joins us now in Belfast. Emma, what happened today?
Well, look, prosecutions of former British soldiers who were involved in the conflict known as the Troubles is very divisive here. And today we saw 2 former paratroopers coming back to Northern Ireland appearing in court and pleading not guilty in relation to the killing of Joe McCann nearly 5 decades ago. Now, back then, the circumstances were that Soldier A and Soldier C, as they're referred to in court, were on patrol in Belfast and they were asked by police to help with the arrest of Joe McCann, but when he ran away, the soldiers opened fire and he was killed. Now, the prosecution's argument is that the shooting was not justified for self-defence or in order to bring about the arrest. A defence case, meanwhile, is that the use of force was reasonable and that Joe McCann was suspected of being a very dangerous individual, a member of the official IRA. Now, also here at court today was Johnny Mercer MP, the former government defence minister. He came to support the 2 defendants. He previously left the government over the treatment of veterans. He believes that former soldiers should be protected from prosecutions like this. But of course, meanwhile, there are many victims, relatives, families in Northern Ireland who believe these cases must go ahead in order to deal with what happened in the past here. Now, this case involving Soldier A and C is expected to last around 4 weeks, but there are many others still under investigation.
Emma, many thanks again. Emma Vardy there with the latest on that case in Belfast. Well, last night saw an Oscar ceremony, unlike any other, held in the Grand Hall at Union Station, Los Angeles, to allow for a COVID-safe ceremony. Nomadland was the biggest winner of the night, and the film's director, Chloe Zhao, became the 2nd woman to be named Best Director and the first of Asian descent. There was another first, as Sir Anthony Hopkins became the oldest winner of Best Actor at the age of 83, while Daniel Kaluuya is the first black British actor to win an Oscar in the supporting category. Will Gompertz watched the ceremony.
The Oscars 2021 pulled into LA's Union Station for a pandemic-era show, a live event presented a bit like a movie. But the script lacked surprises. There was a stumbled start by nominee and guest presenter Regina King.
Oh, live TV, here we go.
The mood was more low-key art house rather than Hollywood blockbuster. Fitting then that Nomadland, an elegiac film about a widowed woman seeking solace on the open road, was the night's big winner. Its writer-director Chloe Zhao became only the 2nd woman in the Oscars' 93-year history to win the Best Director award.
This is for anyone
who have the faith and the courage to hold on to the goodness in themselves.
The film's star, Frances McDormand, took home the leading actress Oscar, the third in her career. And then, when the film won Best Picture, told millions of TV viewers to go to the movies.
Take everyone you know into a theater, shoulder to shoulder, in that dark space, and watch every film that's represented here tonight.
Daniel Kaluuya.
Daniel Kaluuya became the first black British winner of an acting award, picking up the Best Supporting Actor Oscar for his portrayal of Fred Hampton, Chicago's Black Panther leader in Judas and the Black Messiah.
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. To Chairman Fred Hampton, what a man. How blessed we are that we lived in a lifetime where he existed. Do you know what I'm saying?
The 83-year-old Sir Anthony Hopkins became the oldest ever leading actor Oscar winner for his remarkable performance as an old man with dementia in The Father.
Oh, I was a dancer.
Were you?
Yes.
Dad?
What?
You're an engineer.
What do you know about it? Yes, tap dancing was my specialty.
He chose not to attend, which was another blow to an underwhelming show. Still, he was delighted, as he said in a video posted on social media today.
Again, thank you all very much. I really did not expect this. So, I feel very privileged and honoured. Thank you.
Emerald Fennell, familiar to many as Camilla Parker Bowles in The Crown, continued a good night for the Brits by winning the Best Original Screenplay Oscar for her revenge drama, Promising Young Woman.
Oh my God, he's so heavy and he's so cold. I'm going to put him down.
Best Supporting Actress went to Ye Jong-young, who played the mischievous grandma in the gently paced American dream movie Minari. Hollywood will be hoping next year's Oscars will be celebrating films seen at the cinema rather than on a TV at home. That in a world of streaming, people will still feel the magic of going to the movies. Will Gompertz, BBC News.
That's it from us now on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.